And here we are, folks. It is a 5-6 Miami Dolphins team rallying back from that 2-6 start, winning the last three games, beating the Los Angeles Rams on the road, beating the Las Vegas Raiders and New England Patriots at home, and setting up Thursday night's big Thanksgiving night showdown against the Green Bay Packers. Joining me is Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. I am Omar Kelly, Miami Herald columnist, and you are watching Dolphins in Depth, a podcast produced by the Miami Herald. Barry, we hope that the season would get here. We hope that we would get to this point. Um, right now, the Miami Dolphins are one of the hottest teams in the NFL. Would you believe that, Barry? If I told you that a month ago, they'd be one of the hottest teams in the NFL heading into December?
Everything's come together. Now, of course, it's happened during a soft spot in the schedule. Give them credit for taking care of business. They won a difficult game at the Rams.
Barry, there are no soft spots.
True. As we saw Tennessee go into Houston and win yesterday. Yeah, so I give them all the credit in the world. They've gotten back to a point where their season is meaningful. Now, at the end of Thursday night, perhaps it's not so meaningful anymore, but at least they've given themselves a chance to be in contention. What's not helping is the fact that the annoying Denver Broncos keep winning. They won in Las Vegas yesterday, so now you have the Broncos, Chargers, and Ravens all with a little bit of distance from Miami for those three wild card spots. But at least the Dolphins are now in the 8th spot. They're no longer chasing the Colts. They're not chasing the Bengals. So they're the team right behind Baltimore, Chargers, and Denver for one of those three wild card spots. Can they get it? Still an uphill climb, but not out of the question.
No, definitely not out of the question. And what I loved after the game is that both Mike McDaniel, Tua Tagovailoa, even Calais Campbell in his post-game speech, everybody set it up. You know the narratives that are going to be said. You know, we can't be a tough opponent. We can't play in the cold. We're not a good team on the road. Okay, this is our chance and our opportunity to silence all those narratives, Barry. Are you buying into this team finally playing and becoming the team that most of us, not you, but most of us thought they would be heading into this season?
I am, especially offensively, because it's not only Tua's elite play over the past 5 games, 116 passer rating, 11 TDs, 1 interception. But to me, it was meaningful that he went into Buffalo and played well, because I know everybody says he can't play well against good teams. Well, he has, obviously, in Baltimore in 2022, that 6 TD game. He's played well now twice in Buffalo over the last 3 years, the snow game where they scored 24 points, the game in Buffalo, which they lost on the long field goal 3 weeks ago. So I feel so much better about this team offensively, knowing that Tua is performing at an absolute elite level and can go into difficult climates and win. Now, obviously, he's got to prove that again Thursday. He's got to prove that in Houston. Defensively, the big source of encouragement I think we both agree on is what Chop Robinson has become. 10 quarterback pressures yesterday and 29 pass rushing chances. That is an incredibly high number. 22 pressures, 3.5 sacks over the last 3 weeks. He has more sacks over the last 3 weeks than he did against every Power 5 team last year. He had only 2 last year against Iowa and Rutgers. So give Chris Greer and the scouting staff credit. They thought that the pressures, the athleticism, the quick first step would translate to NFL productivity. And over these last 3 weeks, it has. No player has a higher win rate, pass rush win rate over the last 3 weeks in the NFL than Chop Robinson. So I'm encouraged about all that. Benito Jones has played better, but is it going to be enough, Omar? Can you see them winning 5 of the last 6, which is probably what it's going to take because Denver has just been so much better than what anyone would have expected?
I don't know if that matters. I think we'll get there when we get there. It starts with Green Bay. This is the Jordan Love versus Tua Tagovailoa showdown. I am of the opinion people say it's spicy Tua or salty Tua or whatever. He's playing with a chip on his shoulder, and he's playing with a level of confidence that I don't think we've ever seen. And it's not just because of the completion percentage or the efficient play, or He's just angry. He's tired of people talking stuff, Barry. And he's just sick of it. And he wants to silence all the critics and let them know that he is him. Now, the one concern that I do have, you know how I feel about Tua, Barry, and I've had a belief and opinion that he was going to become an upper echelon quarterback, but that requires you to deliver kills in those kill moments where you have the opportunity to put a team away. You have to be a killer. And there are so many instances last season where he was in those positions and could not take a life. And we have seen it time and time again. I think Buffalo was probably the game that he came the closest to. I think he delivered clutch play against Jacksonville. And then Buffalo, I mean, he put his team in position to win the game. It was really the defense that kind of fell short of expectation. And to be fair to the defense, and I say this, when in losses to Arizona and losses to Buffalo, they were playing without 3 starters. That was just a reality of what they had to deal with. Now I think we've seen a different defense, different level of defense with Zach Sealer back and with Kader Kohu back and with Javon Holland back. Even though Javon Holland's kind of been invisible, Barry, I'm not really sure he's making any plays, but you don't see anything beating them over the top. And you definitely don't see anybody taking advantage of him like you see a lot of people taking advantage of Jordan Poyer. The question is, do I believe that they're better than Green Bay and can beat Green Bay on the road, especially on a short week with a lot of aged bodies, and then having lost Anthony Walker this week? Anthony Walker suffered a hamstring injury. Walker, since his insertion into the starting lineup, he'd sewn everything together and kind of made the defense one of the top upper echelon units. Now, Terrell Dotson is going to be replacing him. Pulled down an interception yesterday. He is familiar with this scheme because he played it in Seattle and learned it, even though they cut him and waived him. But do you worry and concern yourself with the drop-off that we could potentially see with not having Anthony Walker Jr. there?
No, I don't think it's a dramatic drop-off at all. But I am more concerned defensively than offensively on Thursday night, not only because Jordan Love's talent, but 2 other things. Josh Jacobs has been the 3rd best running back in football this year. He's 3rd in yards behind Saquon Barkley, who, of course, has been incredible, and Derrick Henry. He has 944 rushing yards. He's rushing at 4.7 yards per clip. This offense is loaded, 8th in scoring, 26.2 points per game. Love has thrown an interception in most of his games this season, but he's still capable of a big play. They've got weapons. So I'm more frightened defensively, even though Sealer has been incredible, even though Ramsey's had a very good year, even though their secondary, at least the corners, held up well, even though Chop has developed. I'm still concerned defensively that they're going to be giving up a lot of points on Thursday. Can they keep up offensively? That's my concern. To me, Omar, this is the hardest game remaining on their schedule. I think the way Green Bay and Houston have played and San Francisco, this is clearly the most difficult game. I feel a lot more comfortable going into a dome in Houston in December and winning like Tennessee did yesterday. I feel a lot better about their chances at home against the 49ers, who are now under 500. This is their stiffest test. And I just wonder, the point you raised about can Tua deliver late? Will it even get to a point where they're down only 1 score late in Thursday's game? Or will the defense, which has probably maximized its healthy available talent this year, will the defense give up too many points in this game for the offense to even be in position for Tua to save them late? I worry about that, and it's not a reflection of me dissing the Dolphins' defense. It's just that Green Bay is really, really good. And
okay, and then aren't the Miami Dolphins really, really good? Aren't the Miami Dolphins scoring 27 points a game?
They're pretty good against the run. It's a top 10 defense.
Who has run on this team, Barry? Who has run on this team that you just said, oh, man, they just can't stop them?
Yes, it's been no gashing, but there obviously were big plays, especially earlier in the season, week 2, the Cook run for a touchdown. This is a good defense. I think Anthony Weaver has maximized his talent. I think it would have potential to be a great defense if Holland were playing at a higher level, if they had Phillips or Chubb or both. And obviously, Chubb's not coming back yet, maybe at some point in mid to late December. And I think they'd be better if they had a better nose tackle. Now, obviously, as we mentioned earlier, Benito Jones has played a little bit better at nose tackle these last 3 weeks. Obviously, they're good with Sealer and Hand and Campbell. So it's a good defense. It's not a great defense. It would have the potential to be a great defense if they had all their parts and if Holland had blossomed into an all-pro, which he hasn't yet. So because of that, I just worry, are we going to see a shootout on Thursday? And can the Dolphins keep up in that weather? If they were playing here, you could say, sure, they could win a shootout because there's nobody better than the Dolphins in 1 p.m. home games, right? I mean, there's just nothing better. But on the road in these conditions, can they win a shootout? I don't know.
Well, hold on.
You sounded more confident.
With this ball control offense, which does not require long routes, does not require receivers running downfield, does not require the big play. This is a ball control offense. It translates to every weather. I mean, especially let's say there's snow. Let's say there's ice. Let's say there's a slick turf. Don't you think that that's going to benefit Devon Achane? I mean, I do have concerns about the run game, and it was 62 rushing yards yesterday, which is the third straight game that they've gone under 100. And they could say whatever they want about how teams are playing us or the defense or we're changing our approach. I'm sorry that the run game is non-existent, and I think that has to be resurrected in order for you to be the team that you have the potential to be. I think personally it has a lot to do with the injuries on the offensive line. That's just my ultimate theory. I could absolutely be wrong. Could be the loss of Alec Ingold. I don't know. But somebody's got to explain to me why the run game has vanished for 3 weeks now. I will say this.
3.2 yards for Achane yesterday. What's interesting is if you believe the Pro Football Focus metrics, I know you're sometimes skeptical of those. Liam was their best run blocker yesterday. Brewer was good. Rob Jones has been so blocking for the run. But I want to make this point because I think we should bring this up. Isaiah Wynn's ready to come back. So some might say, do you put Isaiah Wynn in over Rob Jones at left guard? But I would add this. Isaiah Wynn was exceptional as a pass blocker in those 7 starts before the injury against Philly last year. Didn't give up a sack, gave up only a couple pressures. As a run blocker, PFF rated him 96 of 100 guards. So you're not going to put Isaiah Wynn back in the lineup at left guard thinking he's a better run blocker than Rob Jones. That's not the case. And also, Butch Barry told us that they're sticking with Rob Jones as their starter.
Butch Barry said this Rob Jones' job.
Yeah, where internally are they going to get better against the run? I guess they're just hoping that Ingold gets back to full health, right? And that they're able to block the run that way.
I don't know what the answer is immediately against the run. They're right now at 4.1 yards per carry. I keep hoping that it's going to be Raheem Mostert who resurrects the run game. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Raheem is now at a low of 3.6 yards per carry, which is nothing close to what he's done throughout the duration of his career. I don't know if there was one concern that I had about the Miami Dolphins team, that would be it. It would be the run game, because I believe it's the run game that's going to open up the big passing play. And soon enough, teams are going to adjust and adapt to you and who you've shown yourself to be, and take away that check down. And then once they take away that check down, what's the next level pass? But the one thing that I will say about this offense is they continue to evolve. And that's the main criticism that a lot of people have had about Mike McDaniel, about Tua. And, a lot of these people say that, Tua is a one-read quarterback, which I think is the most moronic statement ever made in the history of statements.
His fourth read was Jonnu on the touchdown yesterday, right?
Yeah.
That was his fourth progression. So that's totally bogus. And also, and I don't want to break your train of thought, but this has been on my mind. You have, and I don't want to call them haters because I think that's a sophomoric, simplistic word, but you have a lot of people out there that you and I see in Twitterverse who are going to dismiss everything Tua does until he goes in and wins, I don't know, in Kansas City, in Baltimore again.
No, until he holds up a Super Bowl trophy, because the minute he beats Kansas City or Baltimore or Buffalo, they're going to say, he only did it once. He can't do it again. He can't do it when it matters, or he can't do it on the road, or he can't do it in the cold. It's never ending. It doesn't matter what he does. And I wrote a story on Sunday, Barry. And I had I probably have dropped the ball because I'm a big stat guy. That's how I got into sports. I love stats. I love studying stats and things of that nature. This season, not so much, just because I guess the bad quarterback play kind of like turned me off a little bit. But Tua right now is on the verge of becoming the 10th quarterback in NFL history to give you 3 consecutive 100 passer rating games. He's at right now 106.3. And we know, considering how efficient he plays, I mean, he's now at 73.3% of his passes, leads the NFL. We know he's gonna be somewhere in the hundreds unless he has some tragically bad game, which I know all his haters are waiting on. But when you look at the company that is on that list, the other 9 quarterbacks, Barry, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Steve Young, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes had 3 straight 100 passer rating seasons. Patrick Mahomes. When you look at the caliber, Joe Montana, when you look at the caliber of quarterbacks that have done that, and when I tell you that Kirk Cousins and Russell Wilson are like the sisters of Mary on that list, what does it make you think about Tua?
It makes me think they're in good position at quarterback. And the thing that I don't understand is, of course, Tua is not the perfect quarterback. Of course, he's got to prove he can win consistently against good opponents on the road and in December and January. But no one who says that he's not the answer is ever able to provide a realistic alternative. If they say Cam Ward, my response is he's not going to be available when they draft it. You see Cam Ward making a couple of foolish INTs, even though he's very talented. So no one ever has a better option. If you're going to complain about Tua and say he's not good enough, give us a better option, and these people cannot do it. Also, I would point to how Dan Orlovsky responded to you on Twitter today. I think that's fair. When you mentioned how impressive Tua has been, Orlovsky made a comment on Twitter, something to the effect of, you'd have to be a moron or something not to realize how good Tua is. So Orlovsky obviously has been a big Tua fan.
Yeah, I didn't even see that response.
Yeah, it was completely in support of your comment. I would point to a couple.
No. I mean, people, but there are a lot of morons out there, Barry. There are a lot of morons out there.
And I get it. He's not delivered. I get it. He's not delivered in a playoff game, but you can't make the argument that he's not good enough and then not have someone who is better to replace him. He is the best you have. He's been plenty good enough so far this season. Let's let the season play out and see how he does in big games. Want to point to a couple other things. They have had 48 possessions in the 5 games since Tua returned. You know how many times they've gone 3 and out? Just 3 times. A completion percentage of 73.3, even though a lot of them are short throws, is incredible. It leads the league. He's now 5th in the league in passer rating at 106.3. And I know some people will say stats, but the difference this year is this. He's going through the progressions more quickly. As McDaniel said, he's not getting upset with himself and lamenting bad plays. It doesn't affect his play later in the game, at least in the 7 games that he's played so far this season. And also, as you've said, Omar, Jonnu Smith unlocks the puzzle in terms of if you're going to have 2 high safeties, Jonnu is always going to be there as a safety valve. So it's as if they figured it out with Jonnu and Achane being the options when the Dolphins receivers get blanketed, when Tyreek and Jalen get blanketed with 2 high safety coverage. And if they're not being blanketed, as was the case yesterday, where New England played only 1 safety deep, then Waddle can become a factor. So they've figured out the keys to the equation, right? The answers to the puzzle they've discovered. Now, will it always hold up against great defenses? No. But I just feel better about this offense now than I ever have, despite the lack of big plays, even though they're bottom 5 in the league of passing plays of 20 yards or more. Am I being reasonable in that, or did you feel better about the Dolphins' offense when they were fireworks central?
I think we're watching an evolution of a quarterback. I've often compared him to a couple of quarterbacks, Chad Pennington and Drew Brees. Chad Pennington's probably the starter kit. When we watched Chad Pennington in 2008, and I think probably some people are too young for that, it was 3rd down conversions. It was drive the team in the red zones and punch it in. It was efficient drives, limited punts, ball control, Now it helps that they had the run game and they had the Wildcat, and maybe we need to resurrect the Wildcat around here, because I don't know what happened to the run game. But now we're seeing Tua elevate himself to the Drew Brees level, where it's no matter what you do, defense, I got a counter for it. I think there's probably maybe only one pass that Tua cannot throw, and if you don't know, I'm not even going to put it out there. But other than that, even defenses, they don't even have time to pressure him. And when they're going big and they're setting up the big plays, they do max protections and the back stay in and the fullback stays in, and that's their big plays. And then they've got outlet passes. I think the offense has evolved. I think the quarterback has evolved, where to this point, 5 years in, there isn't a defense that you could show to it that he hasn't figured out, okay, you do this, I do that. And so that to me is the elevation of the quarterback. The only concern I have about Tua, and he kind of silenced this in last game, the concern that I have about Tua is you're trailing by 6 points. You have 2 minutes and you need to drive. You have a minute and a half. You need to drive down the length of the field. Can you move fast? And I watched him do that at the end of the half against who did they just play? New England, where they got the ball back and they were like, oh, okay. And they didn't punch it in, and that was led to Tua's frustration. But they kicked the field goal. But he was down the field in 3 throws. And so it makes me think now that it's not necessarily the quarterback that can't do it. It's probably the play call selection that has prevented them from doing that. And I think all of that is growing, all of that is evolving. And the question is, will it be good enough in order to beat good teams? Or as you said, Barry, and I do agree with you. I had to give it a little bit of thought. This is the best, strongest opponent on your schedule all season. And if you go in there and you take care of business, you're going to send shockwaves throughout the rest of the NFL. Not only are you going to be back at 500, but you've just sent a message to the rest of the league like we could beat anybody.
Yeah, it's funny, Omar. Passing the ball Thursday is the least of my concerns. I'm more concerned defensively, as we talked about, because of Green Bay's potency and how good Josh Jacobs has been this year. And my other concern, far more than what they do in the passing game on Thursday, is the running game. Now, Ingold played only 9 snaps yesterday on offense after missing 2 games with a calf injury. Obviously, they're going to need him back at full strength. He's a big key in the running game. Achane has averaged 3.1, 4.3, and 3.2 yards per carry in his last 3 games. So 2 of the 3 games have been substandard. You can blame blocking in part for that. Obviously, Jalen Wright, he averaged 4 yards per carry yesterday, but before that, he had rushed for only 8 yards on the previous 10 carries. And most are just 2 for 5 yesterday. He's becoming less of a factor in the running game. So do you play Mostert more? Is he getting enough work?
Is your gardener over there working, Barry? We got. I think that I would like to think and say that they need to give Mostert more opportunities. But then when they've given him opportunities, he hasn't done much with it. If you look at what happened, 2 carries for 5 yards yesterday. And Jalen Wright actually had it going, 7 carry, 28 yards on 7 carries. Honestly, Barry, I don't know what's happened to the run game. I can't sit there and tell you, because it's not like teams are playing them differently. It's just not having the level of success. And I think that might be because of the blocking. The blocking is just not there. I'm like, maybe they're playing superior defensive lines. I thought that was the case with the Rams. I was like, man, those guys are killing it. Then they played the Raiders, and I wouldn't say the Raiders have a superior defensive line. They struggled with them as well. Yesterday against New England. I'm sorry, I don't even look at New England as a difficult defensive line. So I don't know what to tell you about that, Barry. But let's address this. Let's touch on this Calais Campbell situation a little bit, because I do have some thoughts. I found it very interesting. The report came out. As you know, Barry, this is something I've had kind of an idea of what was going on, but that, as I say to people, not everything is meant for public consumption. I'll give it to you how I think it's best that you receive it. You don't need to know all of the nitty-gritty and the dirty details. Calais Campbell, the Dolphins received more than one offer, is what Mike McDaniel put it, that was tempting and desirable. And I'm assuming the 5th round pick was what it was for Calais. But as we know, if they had traded Calais by the trade deadline, especially with Zach Sealer sidelined by the eye injury, season would be done, Barry. We're talking at 2-6, you have this trade on the table, and you have to make a decision. And the Dolphins approached Calais about this situation because they did the right thing. And I hate when people say, oh, what do you mean do the right thing? Calais is a 17-year NFL veteran playing at the age of 38. He is going into the Hall of Fame. He's continuing to play because he's chasing a ring. He came to Miami, accepted a $2 million offer, which is half of what his usual rate is to play football. And because he believed that they would be a Super Bowl champion or Super Bowl contender. When they weren't, he was presented the opportunity if he wanted to go play for a Super Bowl contender, whether it be Baltimore, Kansas City, Detroit. All of those teams were lining up for his services. And he decided that he wanted to stay. He wanted to be here. And he didn't want to send the message to his teammates that he was abandoning them or did not believe. Now, on the condition that he stayed, and this is the other part that people are not getting, Calais made them agree to, hey, if we're not in playoff contention by the time the season ends, will you release me? And the answer was yes. And so that's what I was trying to lead people to understand. Hey, this is potentially what's going to happen at the end of the season if they're not in playoff contention. But this guy wants to make the sacrifice to continue what he started here.
So I think you described everything well on Calais, because I know you had looked into this before the NFL Network report yesterday. Your information's right on. The Dolphins have worked with Calais throughout this whole process. And I think that was classy for them to do, to include him in the discussion, to say, look, if you want to go to a contender, you deserve that right because of A, how respected you are, B, because of the unique circumstances where you signed here under value, 1 year, $2 million. You've done everything you could. So I appreciate that from the standpoint of McDaniel and Grier. I totally disagree, though, with what the compensation would have been for trading him. What in the world would have been the point of trading him 8 games into the season for a 5th round pick in 2026? It would have been worthless. But let me tell you my big takeaway from this, Omar. There is this perception out there, I know among NFL people, that Chris Grier's job is totally safe. And for Grier to make this move at 2-6, to me, shows that he had no concern about losing his job. Because if he was going to trade Calais and have one of the league's worst defensive lines, Zach Sealer aside, obviously, over the last 9 games of the season, and they could have conceivably careened to a final record of 5-12, that shows to me that Grier had no concern at all about his job security, even if the Dolphins had been a last-place team this year. And that's kind of backed up by Drew Rosenhaus, who has said on his show on WSVN Fox 7, local Fox station, that there is no question about Grier's job security. He's here next season. So all of this talk about, oh my God, is this the year Steve Ross opens his eyes and realizes there have been draft mistakes, it's time to go in a new direction? No, apparently it's not happening, or Chris Grier would not have had the confidence to try to move Calais Campbell. So why did it take Mike McDaniel stepping in? This was a move that to me would have made no sense for that level of compensation. If you're talking about a conditional 3rd, if he leads you to the playoffs, or a 4th, maybe, but a 5th, 18 months from now, give me a break. Give me a break.
It would have been a pulling of the plug on the season and would have sent a horrible, I can't even tell you how horrible message it would have been to the locker room. And I think you would have not only just lost the locker room, but I know I would have been writing stories asking for your job. I'm sure people think I'm already doing that. It would have been just a tank move. And I other than doing the right thing by Calais, I don't think it makes sense. One, it's a 5th round pick. What are you, Chris Grier, going to do with a 5th round pick? You can't do anything with a 2nd round pick.
And why did Grier not realize the impact it would have on his locker room? This is the thing about Grier. He's made some specific moves that have been really good that he deserves all the credit in the world for. In free agency, it was smart to get Calais and Jordan Brooks, and Brewer was a good signing. Looks like
his arm had to be twisted to get Calais.
He's had his share of good moves that have allowed him to remain GM for life. However, there are some things that just make you shake your head. Didn't he realize that losing Calais in his locker room would have the exact impact that you described? Why did they totally mishandle the QB tank where he never ordered Brian Flores to play Josh Rosen when they could have had a chance for Joe Burrow? So there are just simple things like this. Not attending to backup quarterback, which you can blame McDaniel as much on for Grier this season.
That's
there are just little things like that. You also could throw David Long into that argument. Why cut David Long when you know Anthony Walker has a history of injuries instead of cutting Channing Tindall? Now, at least in their defense, Dotson's a competent NFL player. He led Seattle.
You could have had both, and you're paying David Long's salary.
Correct. So it is these little things that a 12-year-old could figure out that I think is what grates at the fan base about Grier. And I say that while giving him credit for all of the good things he's done. And he has presided over a team that's made the playoffs twice in the last 2 years. He's certainly not incompetent at his job, but these little things that keep happening, which turn into big things, that's what gets me about how this organization is run in its front office. And Campbell is the perfect example. It would have been a pointless trade. The likelihood is they would have gotten someone with that 5th-round pick that would be out of the league. That's the percentages, right? In the next couple of years, and you would have ruined the last 2 months of the season. You would have lost your locker room, all for some cockamamie 5th-round pick in 2026. What a big waste of time that would have been for everyone.
I don't, and that's part of the reason why it's like everything is not meant for public consumption because it's just not. Now, and here's the thing. Now people are saying, well, you could have got a 5th-round pick and now you're going to let him go for free? Like, no.
Who cares? Who cares? They've made the season meaningful. They go into Thanksgiving with a chance at a playoff berth, and that's fine. We're not talking about a second-day draft pick.
Yeah, not talking about second-day draft pick. And understand, this is about having the perception and the reputation of doing what's right by your players. And I think that there's so much value to that. I mean, they took a victory lap when they were rated by the NFLPA as the best franchise in the NFL for, the meals that they provide and the locker room and the family center and, and understand, please do understand, I'm not minimizing any of that because I certainly enjoy my meals that I'm provided. Yeah, so the salmon is magnificent. But players want to know that you're going to take care of us. And don't tell me that every player in that locker room has engaged. This guy got here. He's the last player signed and did not participate in OTAs, became an unquestioned team captain, and nobody else speaks except for Calais Campbell now.
And you see in that locker room how much he's revered. You walk around that locker room and see the young players talking to him. He's like the voice of God. Yeah, he's incredible. And I just don't understand how they could have devalued, at least from Grier's standpoint, how they could have devalued what his value was in the locker room. Now, all that said, I do credit the Dolphins for being player friendly. It means something that they were first in those player polls. All that stuff is important, and they deserve all the credit in the world for that. And they also deserve credit for being classy with the player and letting Calais dictate his own future. But the compensation they would have gotten was clearly not worth making the trade.
No, it's not. And you're you're sending them to good team, so it's technically going to be like a 6th-round pick.
Exactly. Great point.
Yeah. So, but now people are upset that, you're going to let him go for free, though? Yeah, do the right thing by the players because ultimately it will come back to you. Who knows? Calais might sign here next year after going, if he decides that he wants to continue to play. And you damn sure need him.
Absolutely. Right. Now at the current time, even with Calais back, they still need to sign an upper-level defensive tackle, whether they draft him in the 1st round or find someone in free agency. Without Calais, it would be 2 players needed on their defensive line for when they play 3 down linemen at once. Yeah.
So we will continue to monitor this and monitor all things Miami Dolphins here on Dolphins In Depth. We've got the Thursday night game. We've got a practice, pretty much kind of the only practice this week tomorrow, Barry?
Yes, actually Wednesday. Wednesday is the only day they're practicing this week, and they have 72 hours to do everything. So they're meeting tomorrow, and then Wednesday they'll get on the field. We're not sure it's going to be strenuous. We don't get to see any sort of practice until Wednesday, but we will keep you updated.
Definitely. We will be back on Wednesday.